Can they just sleep on the floor since they're dirty? My son's wife, Vanessa, said this with an ugly laugh. Beside her, my son George also had a disdainful smile. You two can sit on top of some cardboard. Then she pointed to a piece of cardboard carelessly placed nearby, as if she was dealing with something filthy. I felt a deep revulsion for them both. No matter that they were my own children, I couldn't tolerate it anymore. Estrangement. That word flashed through my mind. Shall we go home? My husband Aaron said, turning around, as if he had read my thoughts. Yes, I don't want to stay here any longer. I replied immediately to his words, eager to get away from these two as soon as possible. It seems we're not welcome, so we'll be leaving. And we'll be estranging ourselves from George and the others. That's totally fine with me. And with that, we left without even entering their house, without seeing our grandchildren's faces. A few hours later, while having coffee with Aaron, we enjoyed a peaceful moment. Then, George called Aaron's mobile phone. Aaron glanced at George's name and chose to ignore the call. Watching this, I smiled, thinking George must be facing a hard time now. I am Sophie, a 51-year-old working mother with a part-time job. I have a husband, Aaron, and 2 sons. Aaron and I met through our parents' introduction. I was drawn to Aaron, who was kind and serious, and he liked my gentle nature, so we started dating immediately. A few years later, we got married. Soon after, we were pregnant with our first child, George. You've done well, Sophie. Thank you so much, he said to me with tears in his eyes. Not only him, but also my in-laws praised me, delighted that their first grandchild was a boy, saying, "You did well." 2 years later, we had our second child, Felix. Both boys, they kept us busy with their energetic antics. I got a perfect on the test again. Wow, that's amazing, George. You've worked hard on your studies. Good job. As he grew, he became a child recognized by everyone as exceptional. He studied diligently and had excellent athletic abilities. Meanwhile, Felix was. I heard you helped a kid who was being bullied. You're such a kind soul, Felix. Thanks, Mom. I just had to help them, no matter what. He grew up to be a kind-hearted person, always ready to lend a hand to those in trouble and gentle towards animals. While cherishing their different personalities, we frequently discussed as a family and continued to watch over the paths the two of them would take. Both left home at the time of going to college. Being alone at home feels so unsettling. Maybe I should start a part-time job. That sounds good. It's worth trying something new. Afterward, freed from child rearing, I consulted with Aaron and decided to start a part-time job. I began working at a nearby supermarket, which seemed to suit me. The work environment was pleasant, and I enjoyed my job. It's great you found something you enjoy. Aaron said that, looking at me happily. Moreover, he started to take on more household chores, saying, "We're a dual-income couple now." He had always tried to help out by doing what he could, seeing me run ragged by our sons. So, I told him, but Aaron just smiled warmly. "You've done more than enough already. You don't have to go to such lengths." I love you, Sophie, and I want to be useful. Without any embarrassment, he expressed his feelings. I am grateful to have him and our family as we live our peaceful, everyday life. One day, I'm coming over to the house. George sent such a message out of the blue. Surprised by the suddenness, both Aaron and I, being off work and at home. Therefore, we sent George our consent and decided to wait. It's unusual for him to reach out like this. Indeed, he didn't even show his face when Felix was getting married. After leaving home, George rarely returned or even contacted us. At most, we informed him last year that Felix was getting married, to which he just replied, "Understood," and didn't attend the wedding. Can't get in touch with George. Haven't you heard anything? No. I've only received a "understood" message from him as well. Both Aaron and I, and even Felix himself, couldn't get a reply about attending the wedding from George, despite numerous attempts. After many attempts by Felix, he said he's too busy with work to attend. To miss his own brother's wedding? He said, "I won't waste my time for a useless brother." Such a disrespectful message was sent. Seeing that, both Aaron and I sighed deeply. George had always looked down on Felix. George, excellent in academics and sports. George is truly amazing. George is our pride. Such was the adoration he received from his grandparents, watching him play outside. Such a boyish spirit is good to see. Our grandson is just as expected. They often expressed such views. On the other hand, Felix, who enjoyed reading and quietly spent time in his room. With such nice weather, to stay in the corner of a room. Such a gloomy child. Frowning, the in-laws said that. I couldn't believe their words and always argued back. "If you say such things, I won't let you see your grandchildren." Aaron was clear about it. And upon hearing that, the in-laws who wanted to see George quickly apologized. George was also fond of them, saying, "I want to see Grandpa and Grandma," so we reluctantly let them meet. Felix, on the other hand, was close to my parents. I love being in Grandpa's study and talking with them. My dad is also a reader, with lots of books in his study, and Felix would scrutinize which book to read with sparkling eyes every time we visited, and he would happily share his thoughts with him. That's why Felix preferred going to my parents' house over the in-laws'. Are we going to Grandpa's house next time? Wonder which book I'll read. Ah, but I want to go to other grandparents' house. Last time we went to my parents' house because George insisted on it. This time, we're going to Sophie's parents' house. Both of our parents' homes were within cycling distance, and we tried to visit them equally. Oh, did you go to grandparents' place? Yeah, I went to return a book. George seems to be at Grandpa's house too. As they grew up, both started to go on their own. Surely the in-laws were spoiling George and bad-mouthing Felix. Even if we tried to blame them, there was no proof. Did you go to your father's place again? No. I was at a friend's house near there. George also denied it, saying, "I didn't go. I haven't seen the in-laws." However, he was undoubtedly influenced by the in-laws and developed a disdainful attitude towards Felix. Every time he said something oppressive about Felix, we scolded him, but it seemed futile. What's wrong? Remembering the past, I inadvertently sighed. Aaron asked with concern. It's nothing. Just wondering what he wants. Hopefully, it's not trouble. He nodded at my words. And 4 hours after the scheduled time. He's here. You're quite late. You were probably just lazing around anyway. Unabashed, George entered the house. Following him was a woman. While we were puzzled by the sudden visit, the two quickly sat down on the living room sofa. George, who is this? My wife, Vanessa. We got married. The words uttered by George shocked us so much that we exclaimed loudly. Not, "We're getting married," but "We got married," as it was announced after the fact. Normally, you'd come before getting married. We were in a hurry. Apparently, Vanessa is pregnant. Now that they mention it, Vanessa's belly does seem large. So, she wasn't suffering from morning sickness, and we decided to have the wedding before it became noticeable. I understand the situation, but why didn't you tell us? And we weren't invited to the wedding. At our question, George sneered unpleasantly. We didn't want to invite such shabby people to our glamorous ceremony. We were stunned by his words. What did George just say? Shabby? Us? Exactly as George said. Truly shabby indeed. Vanessa said, laughing mockingly as if to ridicule us. Feeling sickened by such behavior. Vanessa comes from a wealthy family. Her father is a CEO, and I work at his company. Her mother is from a noble family too, so they're in a different class than us, George said mockingly. I wonder why he looks down on his own upbringing so much. Then, what do you want by coming here? Aaron asked with a cold voice. He must be angry at being ridiculed by them. I told you, Vanessa is pregnant. Unlike Felix's wife, who can't have children. Felix's wife, Kelly, has been his childhood friend who lived nearby. They started dating in high school and got married right after graduating from college. Kelly apparently has a condition that makes it difficult for her to get pregnant. I'm fine with that. Kelly is the only one for me. And having Felix is more than enough for me. They had discussed this matter several times. It's Felix and Kelly's issue. As long as the two of them are okay with it, we're not particularly bothered. Yet, bringing this up all of a sudden made me frown. Unlike the worthless Felix's wife, Vanessa will give you grandchildren. You should at least show some gratitude, right? Speak clearly. What do you want? A baby gift? It's not just that. Visiting the house and helping out is the role of a mother-in-law, isn't it? George said, with Vanessa joining him in a nasty grin. They're indirectly telling me to come over and do household chores. Then Aaron silently stood up. It would be an honor to be of use to you. Once Aaron was out of sight, Vanessa started saying that. Right. Since you'll get to hold your grandchild, it's only natural you do as much. Vanessa and George agreed, leaving me puzzled. If it were Kelly, I'd gladly help. But I don't want to assist people who look down on others. Just as I was about to say something, Aaron returned with an envelope in hand. Take this and leave. My wife has a part-time job and doesn't have the time to care for you. Besides, if your family is so prestigious, hire a professional housekeeper. Aaron said this while glaring at them. George seemed upset by these words, but took the envelope without saying anything. What a waste of time. Muttering, George and Vanessa left. Watching them go, I sighed deeply, pondering the future. I thought I was careful, but did I raise him wrong? As I felt uneasy about George and Vanessa's attitude, a notification sound came from my mobile phone. It was a message from Kelly. We're planning a trip with Felix. Would you like to join us? A lovely invitation message with cute stickers. Feeling healed by it, I replied, Thank you for the invitation. Would you like to come over for dinner? They were delighted by the invite, so we decided to have Felix and Kelly over for dinner. Thank you for inviting us today. I love Sophie's cooking, so I'm really happy. We welcomed them at the agreed time and had a lively dinner, during which we talked about George and Vanessa. That wife could she possibly be? Kelly muttered, having heard our story. Apparently, Kelly works at the same company as Vanessa's father, so she knew of Vanessa's existence, though in a different department. According to Kelly, Vanessa is infamously known for the bad reasons. I did hear she was going on maternity leave, Kelly mentioned. Felix seemed thoughtful beside her. Thanks for letting me know. They might contact me next. It's good to be prepared. Indeed, if George couldn't make me a housekeeper, he might next tell Felix, send Kelly over as a housekeeper. If Kelly gets outed as an employee at the same company, they might say, do it if you don't want to be fired. So Felix, make sure you protect her. Felix nodded firmly at his words. Several months later, I receive another message from George on my mobile phone. Our child has been born. So, we're having a baby gift event at our new home. We're inviting you too as a courtesy. Such a condescending message was sent. Honestly, I don't feel like going. But he is my son, after all. Well, I guess we'll attend, but only out of obligation. Right. We'll decide our future relationship based on their attitude at the baby gift event. We agreed to participate in the baby gift and visited their new home using the address provided. Welcome. Ah, so you came. It sounds like you're surprised we actually showed up, greeted by Vanessa and George at the door. Aaron responded to their greeting, which was met with an insincere smile and, not at all. Well, come in. But upon entering, there's no sight of our grandchild. Asking them about it, we're told the child is out with Vanessa's parents. Please wait in the living room until the parents return. However, as we were about to sit down, Vanessa stopped us. Ah, wait, that's my parents' seat. Then where should we sit? Vanessa pointed to the floor in response to my question. Do you mind sitting on the floor since you're so dirty? She said this with a disgusting laugh, with George also smirking unpleasantly beside her. You too can sit on cardboard, pointing to a carelessly placed piece of cardboard nearby, as if we were something dirty. Such behavior deeply disgusted me, as much as he is my own child. I can no longer tolerate it. Disownment. That word crossed my mind. Should we leave? Aaron, sensing my thoughts, turned to me and suggested, yes. I don't want to stay here any longer. I immediately agreed with his words, because I wanted to get away from these two as soon as possible. Since we're obviously not welcome, we'll leave, and we'll be disowning both of you. That's totally fine with me. And so we left without even entering their house, without seeing our grandchild's face. Once home, I blocked George's contact. Immediately, I called Felix and told him about what had happened. Felix and his family were also invited to the same baby gift event. I thought I'd warn them before they arrived at the new home. Got it. Thanks for letting me know. He responded coldly and hung up. Felix resembles me in appearance, but his demeanor is all Aaron. Normally calm, he treasures Kelly deeply. But once he gets angry, he's uncontrollable. George had once angered Felix and suffered terribly because of it. Forgetting that, he's probably getting ahead of himself. Let's have some coffee, shall we? Sure, I'd like that. Several hours later, Aaron and I spent a leisurely time drinking coffee. Then, George calls Aaron's mobile phone. Aaron looks at George's name briefly before deciding to ignore it, watching him. I can't help but think George is probably facing a tough time right now, and I smiled at the thought. Hey, where are we going for our next trip? Let's go somewhere famous this time. Aaron responds with a smile to my question. And time flows by leisurely. Then I get a message from Kelly. What's up? It's from Kelly. She's asking if she can come over now. Is that okay? Of course, let her. After giving our consent. Felix and Kelly arrive a few minutes later, both grinning broadly. You two seem very cheerful. Looks like you've had quite the rampage. Yes. Oh, I recorded it, so you must watch. Responding to our words, Kelly shows us the video on her mobile phone with a smile. The recording starts with Felix ringing the doorbell. The door's unlocked. Just come in. Hearing that, Felix and Kelly enter the house, reaching the living room. Wait, aren't you the famous novelist? A man and woman, presumably Vanessa and her parents, looked at Felix's face in surprise. Felix, a book lover, had become a novelist. His work won a Newcomers Award, and there were talks of media adaptations. He had appeared on TV due to this. The other family must have recognized him from TV. Seeing such a person suddenly show up seemed to shock them. What? Felix is the novelist everyone's talking about? Not only Vanessa and her parents were surprised, but George, his brother, was too. George and Felix hadn't seen each other in years. For George, Felix was still the same as in his memories, and even seeing his changed appearance on TV didn't ring a bell. Since he only published under a pen name, they didn't realize it was him until they met in person. I'm a fan of yours, Vanessa said with a beaming smile. Vanessa's parents, Brian and Karen, also expressed their joy. We're delighted to have such a popular novelist in the family. What? Become family with someone who ridicules their parents? I don't think so, Felix told them with a very nice smile. Suddenly, the other family froze. Then, it was Felix's turn. I know what you said about our parents. You made quite a mockery of them. His words caused Vanessa's parents to frown. Unaware, George muttered back. So you admit you're really shabby? What's so shabby? Are you saying your family is superior? He coldly countered. Even through the video, George's discomfort under Felix's intense gaze was palpable, and he averted his eyes. Dad and Mom loved us equally, recognized our individuality, and supported us. Yet, you always been complaining. That's spoiled rotten by grandparents who indulged his every whim. Felix didn't let George get a word in, continuing to speak. Our reprimands, thinking of George, spoken behind our backs. Supporting George's desired university and arranging tutorials as he wished. We didn't make him struggle for tuition and gave him plenty of pocket money. Realizing how much we were watched over moved me. You acted as if it was all due to you, but it wasn't. Our parents helped George out of genuine love. I can't understand George's disdain for them. Felix spoke nonstop. George was left speechless by his words. Then he turned his gaze to Vanessa's parents, continuing, And you? What kind of upbringing have you given your daughter? Mocking someone's parents, not inviting them to the wedding, only announcing a pregnancy, and then demanding money and care. George and Vanessa looked troubled by these words. Before they could say anything, Ryan spoke up. George, I was told by you that my parents are bad influences on their children and didn't pay for education. It seems Vanessa's parents were told by George that they only exploit me and have never done anything parental. That's why he always stayed with his grandparents. Not inviting them to the wedding was also because they might cause trouble and inconvenience others. Hearing George's explanation, Felix deeply sighed. Still painting the parents as the villains, huh? What exactly have those two exploited from you, George? The reason you went to Grandpa and Grandma's was because they spoiled him and gave him allowance, Felix said, causing Vanessa's parents to exchange looks. If you've read my novel, you'd know who's more credible, right? It's about my gratitude towards my parents and overcoming the mockery from my grandparents. Vanessa's parents nod at Felix's words. Beside them, Vanessa makes a puzzled face. Eh? Really? Just from that, it's clear Vanessa hasn't read Felix's book. How you can that you're my fan who even haven't read my book? He murmurs, sighing again. Then he turns to us, or rather, to Kelly, who is recording. Let's go. Staying here any longer is pointless. Yes, let's. The video ends there. Felix, well said. You're my pride, Aaron says after watching, and Felix smiles happily. Immediately after finishing the video, loud noises came from the entrance. Why are you ignoring my calls? What have you done? George and Vanessa enter, yelling. That's right. I had given George a spare key. They must have used it to get in. What do you want? Felix frowns at the noisy pair, ignoring them. Kelly, would you like a refill on your coffee? Eh? Oh no, thank you. Don't bother. Don't be shy. Aaron and I ignore the two, surprising Felix and Kelly. Meanwhile, George and Vanessa, oblivious to our reaction, start ranting. It's all because of that woman. I got scolded by Dad. It seems something Kelly left behind has put them in a tight spot. That parting gift was an internal investigation at the company. That's right. Because of what was written, my path to becoming the next CEO is now closed. Apparently, not only Vanessa, but George's reputation was also bad. Initially, George worked diligently, but after marrying Vanessa, he became arrogant, claiming, I'm the next CEO. It seems the people around him could no longer keep up with him. You've really done it now. Vanessa was known for flirting with men at work and pushing her work onto them. If anyone disobeyed, she used her status as the CEO's daughter to pressure them into resignation. Thus, no one dared to refuse her requests. Furthermore, she would harass any woman who even slightly stood out. They left behind documents recording their deeds. Moreover, Vanessa's choice in men was questionable. But whether that child is George's, I really can't say. Leaving those words, Kelly had left their house. Hearing Felix and Kelly's story, and presented with evidence, the other parents were furious. They ousted the two from the company, declaring, You're disowned. If things stay this way, we'll be kicked out of that house too. Even the child might be taken away by my parents. Apparently, George's new house was a baby gift from Brian. From the level of their anger, it seemed likely they would lose the new house as well. If that happens, Vanessa and I won't be able to raise the grandchild, was the concern. It's getting colder recently. I can't wait to warm up with a trip. Right. By the way, Sophie and I were discussing where to go. Do you have any place in mind? Ignoring George and Vanessa, we continued to speak cheerfully to Felix and Kelly. At that moment, George looked at us for the first time, puzzled. Dad? Mom? We were thinking, since it's a special occasion, why not go somewhere famous? If you two don't mind, how about staying overnight? George spoke to us in a hurried manner, but we ignored him. After a brief struggle and receiving no response. Let's go. Staying here is pointless. Wait. What? With shoulders slumped, Vanessa and George left. We need to change the locks, Aaron muttered as the door closed. Felix and Kelly exchanged glances. How about moving in with us? It might be better, considering they could come back. Apparently, they had been considering living together for a while. We joyfully accepted their offer, sold this house, and moved in with them. Thanks to that, we no longer had to deal with George and Vanessa's disturbances and enjoyed a peaceful life. Soon after, they both were supposedly fired from the company. The president himself came to apologize. "I'm sorry for not noticing my daughter's foolishness," he said. We were also apologized to by Vanessa's parents. They regretted misunderstanding us and not greeting us properly. Perhaps her parents weren't bad people. However, Brian being busy with his company and Karen running her beauty salon, they didn't spend much time with Vanessa. As a result, Vanessa developed such a personality. When they came to apologize, I asked how the two were doing. George and Vanessa, kicked out of the new houses, went to their old houses but found it sold. Stunned, they somehow managed to rent an apartment. Then they started job hunting to make a living. But in such circumstances, they couldn't raise a child. Therefore, Vanessa's parents considered taking the child in but declined, saying, "We are not qualified to raise a child." So it was decided that Felix and Kelly would take the child in. Fortunately, the child, William, truly is our grandchild, having George's blood. It seems they intended to push the child care onto me from the start. They usually left it to Karen or professionals. "I'll raise him well," Kelly said, holding William lovingly. Felix was also eager to participate in raising him. Taken in by them, he is bound to be happy. I plan to support them as much as I can. Sometime later, Felix received a message from George. "Now I understand how foolish I've been." Following this incident, George and Vanessa, whose relationship soured, divorced. Becoming lonely made George reflect on his actions. But regretting now is too late. When I said William and his parents wouldn't meet him, he was visibly disappointed. However, his repentance didn't seem genuine. According to Felix, his attempt to show a changed heart seemed more like a plea for help for himself. George hasn't changed, so we can just leave him be. Indeed, my parents influenced George negatively, but he's old enough to take responsibility. We won't reach out to him anymore. Thus, he was abandoned by us. He vanished into the entertainment district, having no one to rely on. But that's none of our concern anymore. As for Vanessa, despite being disowned by her parents and divorced from George, she couldn't lower her standard of living and ended up in debt. Unlike George, she didn't have our contact information, and being disliked by those around her, she couldn't seek help from anyone. Eventually, she was forced into tough jobs introduced by debt collectors. "Well, it's none of our business," I muttered, watching William sleep in my arms. Several years later, looking forward to the trip. I never thought it would be postponed this much," Aaron replied, nodding to Aaron's words about the trip we had promised back then. We had just taken in William and were busy with moving and other things, so it had been postponed. Right when we thought we'd settled down, Kelly got pregnant. We all celebrated that time. When William was about 3, Kelly's pregnancy was discovered. Having 2 grandchildren filled us with joy. And now that Emily, William's sister, has grown a bit, we could finally go on that trip. Granny Gramps, I'm excited about the trip. While talking with Aaron, William runs over with a beaming smile. And we returned the smile to William, who talked with such happiness. "William, you know you shouldn't run, right?" He is full of energy. Felix and Kelly approach, saying this. In Felix's arms is Emily, who reaches out her hand towards William as they get closer. The sight of the siblings getting along so well warmed our hearts. Then, shall we go? We nod at Felix's words, and we start walking with smiles on our faces. There might be many challenges ahead, but I'm confident we can overcome anything as a family, supporting each other.
Mom's room is mine now, Catherine said, laughing. And what am I supposed to do? Sleep in the car. Carl made a shooing gesture at me. Understood. With that, I turned my back on them. Basically, they were saying I was unnecessary. Well, I have plans of my own then. I bit my lip. Thinking back, they've always done whatever they wanted. I tolerated it because I thought of us as a family. But to them, I was just a roommate. Apparently, it's fine if I'm not around. Then, I don't need to put up with it either. I'll do as I please. Be prepared. I will never forgive you, even if you regret everything after losing it all. I decided to make them experience the humiliation I had been through. My name is Miranda. At 47, I work in the editorial department of a travel magazine. But I only show my face in the office about once a week. I'm usually at home, facing off with my computer screen. In short, I'm a remote worker. There's a reason for that. When I was 24 and married Carl, he had said this before our wedding. I'm in sales, and I don't have time for housework. So, I want you to be a housewife. But I didn't want to quit the job I loved. So, I became a remote worker. In between housework, I started working from home. Then, our daughter Catherine was born. From then on, it was a dizzying cycle of parenting, housework, and work. Yet, Carl and Catherine don't understand. You have it easy. You can do whatever you want at home. Remote work is just pocket money, right? They mock me like that. Why don't I just divorce? I've thought about it more often since Catherine moved out. But early in our marriage, Carl was very considerate of me. I was drawn to that side of him, and that's why I decided to marry him. However, that didn't last long. Half a year into our marriage, Carl became engrossed in his hobbies. What are you doing? Working on the motorcycle. Carl looked up, covered in oil. His clothes were dirty too. He was really focused. Motorcycles are fine, but help out with the housework too. I know, Carl said with a laugh and started working on the motorcycle again. Our new home after getting married was a house in the suburbs. The building was old, but it had a garage for the motorcycle. That's why Carl was quick to decide. Of course, the rent was cheap, so I'm glad we live here. But I have some regrets. Because of that garage, Carl started hoarding motorcycle parts. Since we have the garage, it's okay if I buy them, right? Carl kept buying parts, one after another. Gradually, more expensive parts started to accumulate. Those expenses eventually began to strain our finances. It's affecting our budget, so could you cut back a little? Huh? It's my money I'm earning. I can spend it however I want. All I wanted was to save even a little. But that didn't get through to Carl. Every time I said something, Carl would become defensive. This repeated, and gradually, our relationship soured. Then, one day, I noticed a change in my body. I feel feverish. It wasn't serious, but it bothered me. So, I went to the doctor. The diagnosis was pregnancy. Joy, but at the same time, a rush of anxiety. With things not going well with Carl, will I be able to have this child with peace of mind? Maybe we'll divorce. What should I do? While filled with anxiety, I told Carl about the pregnancy. Then, Carl was overjoyed. From that day, Carl changed completely. I'll do the shopping on my way home from work. Cleaning and laundry, I'll take care of on my days off. Just like that. He started taking care of everything, even though he never helped before. It's amazing how much he changed. All my previous anxieties vanished like a lie. I regained a happy life. Eventually, Catherine was born. At that moment, Carl left me behind and doted on Catherine. Maybe his affection was too much. Catherine was spoiled by Carl's doting and grew up selfish. She wouldn't listen to me, and even a little scolding would set her off. By the time she was in middle school, Catherine completely stopped listening to me. Of course, I complained to Carl. "Don't spoil Catherine. Her recent tantrums are too much." "Really? Kids' whims are cute, aren't they?" Carl's words irritated me. Then, Catherine entered the room. "Are you just jealous because you're not getting enough attention?" Catherine said, laughing out loud. Carl joined in the laughter. I stood up, as if to escape. "I have work to do." Sneering, Catherine laughed. "Just your little home-based job, right? Good luck making pennies." It felt silly to even respond. Ignoring Catherine, I left the room. Immediately after, I could hear Catherine and Carl talking inside. "Hey, there's this dress I want." "All right. I'll buy it for you." "Yay! Dad, who actually works, really is different." I pretended not to hear. From then on, Carl made no attempts to hold back. He bought Catherine whatever she wanted. It seemed he was giving her allowance on the side, without me knowing. Just endure until Catherine is independent. Then, I'll divorce Carl. That's what I was thinking. Eventually, Catherine graduated high school, said she wanted to be a hairdresser, and left home. Now I can be free. I started preparing for divorce. Meanwhile, Carl revived his motorcycle hobby and occasionally went on tours. Probably, he's trying to distract himself from the loneliness. Well, the money spent on Catherine is now going towards the motorcycle. I was planning to divorce anyway. I might as well let him have his freedom for a bit. I tried not to interfere. Then, on a certain holiday, Carl came to borrow my car. "What do you need the car for?" "Going golfing with a colleague." Carl usually commutes by bus. And he's more into motorcycles, hardly ever using a car. But the car was mine, bought by me, and mostly driven by me. Yet, today he wanted to use it. Could it be a drive with an affair partner? Sensing this, I lent the car to Carl and then ordered something online. A few days later, the ordered item arrived. I quickly installed it in the car. Afterward, Carl began using the car frequently. And every time, he seemed happy leaving. So, I suspected infidelity each time. I decided to confront him only after gathering evidence. I whispered to myself and continued to endure. As this continued, about a month went by. Divorce was becoming more of a reality. Since I work from home, I won't have financial worries even if I divorce. But I'm also over 40. It wouldn't be surprising if I couldn't work someday. That's when I remembered my parents' house. Mom passed away a few years ago, and now it's almost like an empty house. The house is old, but it's mine. Renovating that house might make living easier. Having a house makes a difference. That's what my late mom always said. Remembering Mom's words, I immediately discussed it with Carl. "I want to demolish my parents' house and build a new one. If you're paying for it, do whatever you want." Carl's indifferent attitude. But still, it was an agreement. I immediately took action. I found a house builder and requested a construction. Thanks to that, my life suddenly got busy. Then, just before the house was completed, Catherine contacted us for the first time in a while. Actually, I'm pregnant. Pregnant? Who's the father? A guy named Cody. We've filed for marriage, but Cody's busy with work. According to Catherine, her husband Cody is in his busy season, so he can't come to greet us. Moreover, Catherine is already pregnant. She's anxious about being alone, so she wants to come home for childbirth. No matter how whimsical, Catherine is my dear daughter. I can't say no to her coming home. Reluctantly, I agreed to her coming home for childbirth. Eventually, my house was completed. We moved in, and Catherine came back. After looking around the house, Catherine asked me, "There are few rooms, but where should I stay?" "Use the guest room. It's not big, but it's fine for sleeping." "Don't I have my own room? It's a new house, after all." Catherine sulked. Again. And as I was getting exasperated, Catherine said with a laugh, "Then let's do this. I'll use Mom's room." "And what am I supposed to do?" When I questioned back, Carl cut in. "Sleep in the car." Carl made a shooing gesture at me. Understood. With that, I turned my back on the two of them. Basically, they were saying I was unnecessary. Well, I have plans of my own then. I bit my lip. Thinking back, they've always done whatever they wanted. I tolerated it because I thought of us as a family. But to them, I was just a roommate. Apparently, it's fine if I'm not around. Then, I don't need to put up with it either. I'll do as I please. Be prepared. I will never forgive you, even if you regret everything after losing it all. I decided to make them experience the humiliation I had been through. And the preparations for divorce are already in place. Just perfect, I'll leave home right now. At that moment, I resolved to divorce. I went back to my room and packed a change of clothes in a bag. Holding the bag, I returned to where Carl and Catherine were. "You don't need luggage just to sleep in the car." "I need it because I'm leaving." "Leaving?" Carl's eyes widened in surprise. To such Carl, I handed over the divorce papers I had. "Sign this." "Divorce papers? You're planning to divorce?" "If it's about sleeping in the car, it's much better to divorce," I yelled at Carl. Carl shuddered in surprise for a moment. But soon, Carl smiled smugly. "What, just bluffing, right? Fine, I'll sign." Carl snatched the divorce papers as if to take them from me. He signed right there. "Ah, finally divorcing, huh? Well, I don't need a nagging mom anyway." Catherine sneered. It seems neither Carl nor Catherine understands the situation they're in. I smiled. "Catherine, with our divorce, you can't live like before." "Huh? Dad's the one supporting us financially." "What are you talking about?" "You have no clue, do you?" I showed my mobile phone to Catherine with a laugh. "Look carefully. Do you know what this is?" "Eh? What's this?" "Our household budget book. See the repayment of debts written here?" I pointed to the mobile phone screen. Then, Catherine leaned in to look. "All these debts were made by you." "Huh? I didn't borrow anything." Catherine was indignant. "Right, you didn't borrow. Carl borrowed for you." "Eh? Dad did." Catherine turned to look at Carl with wide eyes. Carl was avoiding her gaze. "You were spoiled by Carl, right? The money you used, all of it was debt." "Lie. That's a lie, right, Dad?" Catherine confronted Carl. But Carl just shifted his gaze, giving a reaction like confirming it. Catherine was dumbfounded. I added insult to injury. "That's why Carl's salary is mostly used for repaying debts." "Then, what about living expenses?" My salary, you mocked. From now on, enjoy living with debt-ridden Carl. Catherine turned pale at my words. She suddenly clung onto me. Wait, Mom. What about my living expenses here? Who knows? Asked Carl. With no money? That's impossible. Living in my parents' home means luxury. That's what she must have thought. But in reality, it will be a life with debt-ridden Carl. She must be desperate. Well, you two get along now. I said that and left the house. Leaving home, I moved to an internet cafe and decided to stay there for now. I got the divorce papers. Now, if only there was someone to negotiate the divorce terms. I searched for a lawyer online and also contracted a weekly mansion for my immediate accommodation. Taking a moment to breathe, I started to think about what's next. Carl and Catherine are probably fighting over the debt issue. But that's not enough for me. What could be a good idea? While searching online, an advertisement caught my eye. At that moment, I muttered, "Selling the house. That's it." I immediately contacted the real estate agent from the advertisement. A few days later, on a holiday, I returned home with the real estate agent I had contacted. When I rang the doorbell, Catherine showed her face. "What are you doing here? Is that any way to speak to Mom?" "Mom? You're not Mom if you're divorced," Catherine yells. It seems she's resenting me over the living expenses issue. Ignoring Catherine, I enter the house. Then, Catherine notices the real estate agent behind me. "Wait. Who are those people?" "Real estate agents." "Real estate agents?" Catherine looks puzzled. I smile sweetly before declaring, "We're selling the house. They've come for the appraisal." "What? Selling the house?" Catherine raises her voice. That's when Carl finally shows up. "What's going on, Catherine? Why the loud voice?" "This person is saying she's going to sell the house." "This person, huh?" I felt irritated but bit my lip to keep calm. Meanwhile, Carl looks at me, indicated by Catherine, and quickly notices the real estate agent behind me, starting to get angry. "What do you think you're doing? Don't do things on your own." Carl points a finger right at my nose, yelling. I push his finger away and respond calmly. "I decided to sell the house. You have no right to interfere." "Don't mess with me. If you do whatever you want, I'll sue." "Sue all you want. The house is in my name." At that, Carl is at a loss for words. Then, Catherine, trembling her lips, asks Carl, "The house is in her name? Not Dad's?" "That's, well." "What do you mean, well?" "I wasn't told." Carl and Catherine start to argue. Pushing past them, I guide the real estate agent further inside. "Please proceed with the appraisal." After telling the agent, I return to Carl and Catherine. They are still arguing. "You're getting divorced, right? Get the house as alimony. That's a bit." "Why not?" As Catherine screamed, I intervened. "That's impossible. I'm not at fault." "Shut up!" Catherine shoves me aside. Furious, I yell at her. "Enough! Carl is the one who should be paying compensation for the divorce." "What? It's just a fight leading to divorce, right? It's not about who's at fault." "The divorce is due to Carl's infidelity. The recent argument was just the last straw. Right?" I glare, and Carl looks down. Beside us, Catherine is shocked. "Actually, he's been cheating for a while. That's why I've been considering divorce." "Cheating? Are you sure it's not just in your head? Catherine scoffs. Meanwhile, Carl is sweating profusely. Well, he's practically admitting it, but let's present the evidence. I place an envelope I brought on the table. I thought we'd talk about the divorce, so I prepared some documents. I pull out photos from the envelope. They show Carl talking to an unknown woman inside a car, using my car for an affair. It's appalling. That's why you leave evidence without realizing. How did you? Carl is stunned. No way around it. It was on the dash cam. Dash cam? Carl's eyes widen. Oh, you didn't know? Dash cams can record inside the car too. I know, but... Nowadays, dash cams are common knowledge. They can record not just the front and rear of the car, but also inside it. So, I used that to my advantage. When I first lent my car to Carl, I suspected his infidelity. That's why I bought the latest dash cam online and installed it inside the car. As a result, I captured Carl's affair. So, I printed these out. Any excuses? No. I mean, Carl is unable to articulate a clear response. Feeling victorious, I ask him about the compensation, including the affair, $30,000. That's fair, right? I can't pay that much. Then sell the motorcycle. If you refuse, we'll go to mediation, to court. At that, Carl's shoulders slump, defeated. Then he mutters okay. While we were talking, the appraisal finishes, and the real estate agent leaves. Well, I'm going home. I stand up quietly. At that moment, Catherine, who had been silent, speaks up. Wait. I won't allow you to sell the house. Whether you allow it or not, the sale is already decided. Shut up! Shut up! I'm not leaving, ever! Like a child throwing a tantrum, Catherine runs off to her room. Speechless, I sigh in disbelief. Then I tell the dejected Carl. Anyway, I've informed you about the house sale. You have until next Saturday to leave. Wait! Please reconsider! Carl suddenly starts begging on his knees. No way! I'm not stopping the divorce or the sale of the house. Please rethink this. We won't be able to live if things continue this way. I don't care. Do as you please. I turned my back on Carl and hurried towards the entrance. Then, Carl chased after me, shouting, What's so fun about doing this? It's not about fun. I just want revenge for being cheated on. I let a spiteful smile creep across my face. At that, Carl is left speechless. I give Carl one last warning as he looks down. Don't forget, you have until Saturday to move out. Carl nods quietly. The next day, I move out the remaining belongings from the house. Catherine still looks displeased as ever. I remind Catherine one last time about the deadline to leave. She turns her face away. I wonder what other revenge I could enact. As I ponder this, Saturday arrives. And around the time the date changes to Sunday, I'm awakened by my mobile phone ringing. Hello? I answer the phone, still groggy. Immediately, Catherine's loud voice blares through. What have you done? Huh? Catherine? Surprised, I sit up in bed. Meanwhile, Catherine continues to scream. The house suddenly went dark. This is your harassment, isn't it? I think for a moment before asking Catherine. Are you saying you haven't moved out? Of course not. I don't acknowledge selling the house. Oh, that's why. At that moment, I understand why Catherine is angry. After deciding to sell the house, I naturally canceled the water and electricity contracts. Of course, a grace period is necessary. So, I had arranged for the contracts to end on Saturday. Usually, utilities aren't cut off immediately after contract termination. Normally, technicians come to the house during the day after cancellation to shut off the services. However, my house had a smart meter for electricity. It can be turned off remotely, so the electricity was cut off the moment the date changed. That means the electricity contract was canceled, so you can't use electricity anymore. What? That's ridiculous. Don't mess with me. Catherine starts yelling again. I nonchalantly pull the phone away from my ear. After Catherine calms down a bit, I tell her again. It can't be helped. The house is already sold. What am I supposed to do? We can't live without electricity. Catherine throws another tantrum. So, I speak to her as if soothing a child. It's because you wouldn't listen. Besides, making noise there might get you reported. Reported? Catherine tilts her head in confusion. When I was moving out, I informed the neighbors that I had sold the house. Basically, as far as the neighbors are concerned, my house is now vacant. Making noise there could lead them to think a burglar has entered. Moreover, the only light Catherine likely has is from her mobile phone. Nothing could be more suspicious. So, you should quickly get outside. I start to say, but then Catherine screams. Carl's shouting is also audible. Maybe they got reported. I hang up, thinking this. After getting dressed and rushing to the house, as expected, Catherine and Carl are being detained by the police. I apologize for the disturbance. They're technically family, though we're planning to divorce. I bow to the officers. Then, I apologize to the neighbors who were disturbed by the commotion. Turning around, I see Catherine and Carl starting to argue again. It's because Dad cheated. You were the one kicked out for cheating. It seems they were a like father, like daughter pair after all. The argument between the two continues, regardless of appearances. I haven't been caught yet. I'm just under suspicion. Catherine shouted, and then a man intervened. Catherine, so you were really cheating? The man was Cody, Catherine's husband, who had come to pick her up in a night bus. Cody! No, it's not what it looks like. Catherine started making excuses, but it was too late. In the end, the family drama ended up being a public confession of their infidelity to the neighbors. Afterward, Carl and I divorced, and so did Catherine and Cody. Catherine ended up having to pay alimony to Cody. However, Catherine had no money and was pregnant. Carl was also drowning in debt. Eventually, Carl had to sell his motorcycle to pay the compensation to us. Moreover, Carl got into trouble with the police, which was mistakenly reported to his company as a quarrel with his affair partner. He denied it, but the rumors spread, and he ended up leaving his job. Later, I heard Carl and Catherine moved to a small apartment to save money. Apparently, Carl is working a part-time job, barely making ends meet. As for me, I canceled the house sale. Of course, there were fees involved. But I decided to cover those with the compensation I received from Carl. It'd be a waste not to live in it, having built and all. So now, I'm enjoying living alone in my new single-family home. I think I'll be fine on my own for a while. Thinking such, I'm currently working quietly in my new room.